everything in there that is appropriate on and so we were just talking in the car. Obviously, you just pulled in, but it's Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. And we were talking about I mean, we can start with Dominion voting, or we can literally go into the universal time zone, which is actually, yeah, like I said, you were speaking to my soul. So
Yeah.
if you could, please introduce yourself to everyone that maybe doesn't know you, and then we can just wing it.
Yeah. So, Mark Finchem, I served, 8 years in the Arizona House of Representatives from 2015 to 2022. Was the Trump endorsed Republican nominee for Secretary of State. Many people believe that including myself, that I won that race. However, due to an irredeemably compromised election and software fraud, we can now call it fraud because there were criminal actions taken by individuals within the Maricopa County Elections Department. We caught them. Because of that irredeemably compromised election, we now have a Sinaloa cartel lawyer who is the Secretary of State, and an imbecile by the name of Katie Hobbs, who is the so-called governor. And then, of course, we have an extreme radical left AG who likes to persecute people, even though there's jurisprudence saying she's wrong. She likes to do those things instead of prosecuting real crimes.
Hmm.
So I was recruited after moving up to Prescott, Arizona, which is removed from Maricopa County, up in Yavapai County, where people are more sane. Was recruited to run for a Senate seat for the state Senate by a number of people that just were very unhappy with the senator from Yavapai County. His name was Ken Bennett, is Ken Bennett. That individual, by the way, was chief among the people who attempted to undermine the 2020 Senate forensic audit of the Maricopa County election. And he was caught on video turning over sensitive documents to the radical left media like CNN, MSNBC, and that crew. So he undermined Senate President Karen Fann and eventually was removed from that position, but the damage was done. So now he is about to be out of office. He's currently serving the rest of his term until, I think, January. And at that time, I'll be replacing him. So we've kind of swapped out a Democrat registered as a Republican for a hardcore Republican. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, and so, that is, I guess, some silver lining in this situation because I know generally there is a feeling of, from at least the limited number of people I've talked to in the audience I reach and the people I engage, that there is somewhat of feeling of hopelessness after seeing the 2020 election and after seeing the runoffs in 2022. And although those were absolutely criminal, I stayed up and watched them. Um, you also have to, and not you, but the general you also have to be careful of learned helplessness. Something can be helpless, sure, but there is also a tactical advantage by your enemies for you to be demoralized. It'd be like if, you know, it'd be like if I went and opened a water bottle and nothing was in it. So I went and opened the second one, nothing was in it. They're all empty. Well, true, those first two are empty, and that sucks. That doesn't necessarily mean the entire case is empty, but they want you to because learned helplessness is a very powerful, Soviet to a T method to break your will. What would you say to people who have that feeling of helplessness watching these elections and it's the Republicans winning and winning and winning and oh my Lord, it's 2 a.m. and there's a miracle ballot drop of 900 trillion votes for Joe Biden. Like, what would you say to those people and myself included?
Well, I think let's go back for just a moment. Learned helplessness is an output of hopelessness. When people have no hope, and human beings can only go so long without hope
Hmm.
before they give up. And I think that we're not at that stage yet. I think that there are a lot of people who feel hopeless, but there are a lot more of us who are very much in tune with what's going on. In fact, a little plug for an important book, Fifth Generation Warfare by Boone Cutler and General Mike Flynn. You can get
Hmm.
that book at generalflynn.com. I highly recommend that if you want to understand what's going on in the background. And I'm glad you used the word Soviet. This is very much a psyop that we have been living under probably for better than a decade. And it's hard to go back and think, gosh, 2016, that was so long ago. So it would tell me that we've actually been living under a psyop for 20 years. And along with that is conditioning. The people have been conditioned to think a certain way. We now are seeing the demise of broadcast media. I'm excited to see things like podcasters like yourself, Sam Anthony, for example, at Your News, which is a print media. Not print as in the traditional paper and ink, but it's replacing online newspapers with an interesting twist. You can get local, state, and federal news all in one place. And it's providing a home to citizen journalists and to professional journalists. Anybody who's got a story that's factual, that and it's making a place for conservative writers to put words in front of the people. No longer are we going to see the exclusive land of digits owned by the extreme left press. Even outfits like New York Times, Washington Post, they're even failing. I mean, we're looking at massive layoffs at those organizations. Why? Because the people aren't buying their crap anymore. People know that there's something wrong. And that, I think, that's the essence, that's the evidence, if you will, that hopelessness is not pervasive. It's there, it's real, but we've got people who are critical thinkers who are saying, no, I'm not buying this anymore. I'm not buying what appears to be an AI generated crowd in front of Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's pretty pathetic. For example, when you look at I believe there was a video, or I saw the still shot of it. It looked like Kamala Harris was in front of a podium, and the people to the side of her, it was very clear that the shot was managed so that you could see all 25 people.
Yeah.
It looked like a high school math class.
Yeah.
It did not look like this massive outpouring of support for cackling Kamala. And it just the Democrat Party has gotten so into appearances, it's fluff without substance. So now we have people waking up. All of the effort that's gone into you go woke, you go broke, those kinds of things. I think President Trump has done a very good job at calling out, let's make this too big to rig. That's a brilliant statement on his part, by the way. So if people want to end the culture of hopelessness and avoid the culture of helplessness, get your happy butt off the couch and get active in the political scene in your community. Now, I'm reminded of the story of Gideon's 300. I no doubt know about that story, but I'll kind of walk through it. He started off with 30,000 men to go into battle. And the Lord said, no, that's way too many. Cut it down to 3,000. Okay, all y'all, I just need 3,000 of you to stay. And everybody goes home. Not everybody. Then the Lord also said, well, actually, let's go down to 300. You're only going to need 300. And of course, Gideon's like, okay, you're all powerful, omniscient God. How am I going to do this? You're going to rely on me, God said. Because if you'd have had the 30,001, you would have thought that it was you that did it. So had to make space for God to do his thing. And I think that that's the moment that we're in now. We're living in a modern day Babylon, and I'll not put a name. You'll recognize this term. I'll not put a name to the horror of Babylon. There's a lot of candidates that could fill that role. Okay. I mean, candidates generally. I don't mean candidates as in political candidates.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, okay? But I think that we are at this point where the people, the ascension of the populist movement is a remarkable thing to watch. And I think as we look back to 2020, there was a flashpoint moment that we had at the time. I was the chairman of the Federal Relations Committee for the House of Representatives. It was in my last, I think it was in my last term. And we could not get the Speaker of the House to authorize, a guy by the name of Rusty Bowers, who has since been disgraced. We could not get the Speaker of the House to authorize the use of the Capitol to hold a hearing on the Maricopa County election that clearly people had some pretty serious problems with. Now, it was 2020, okay? Well, we ultimately ended up having it at a private venue. It was paid for by the people. We did not use state resources, which kind of was a blessing in disguise. Had we had it at the Capitol, had the state paid for it, it would have been viewed as controlled by the state. No, this was controlled by members like Senator Sonny Borelli, Representative Leo Biasucci, Senator Dave Gowan, a couple of past, soon to be past folks at the time. So, it's interesting to watch 10 and a half hours of that hearing that the media wanted to assail, but the people really knew what was going on, and they watched it. We had hundreds of thousands of people watching that, and I think we've gone way over the multi-million mark of people that watched it. But the media assailed that, and by the way, they're in the tank for Marxism. They really want to. What they don't understand is that under Marxism, they don't have a First Amendment right to talk. But we'll get to that later. So the media assaults that. And 15 days later, we have a brave senator by the name of Eddie Farnsworth, who issues subpoenas to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. All right, let's walk through that. For the law enforcement folks that are watching your show, they understand that you got to have probable cause to issue subpoenas. There's got to be some there. There's got to be some smoke, okay? So for the media to say, well, there was nothing there, for the then Governor Doug Ducey to say, well, it was nothing more than a meeting. Well, no kidding. Every time the legislature meets, it's a meeting, whether it's a hearing or an ad hoc hearing. That was a spark that, and I think if I recite Steve Bannon's words, he says, brother, you started a grass fire that has turned into a nationwide conflagration. And it is a call to action by people in every single state for such things as paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level, watermarks on the ballot stock, so that we can make sure that illegitimate documents are not included in the universe of legitimate documents, those kinds of things. What's amazing to me, and this has kind of backfired on the extreme left, is they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prevent the comparison of a hand count of certain races to machine tabulation. Well, why is that? If you were so confident in machine tabulation, I would think that you'd be giddy as a school child trying to prove that machine tabulation was accurate through the use of paper ballots. Yet we have idiots like Nancy Pelosi say, well, audits undermine confidence in elections. No, only in your fantasy world. Audits are designed to do one of two things: reveal that a system has issues, or prove that a system does not have issues. There's only two outcomes, okay? Jim and Joe Hoft have done some great work on this. I think Joe was I don't know which major house, accounting house he was working for, but he was in China watching what was going on there and went through, business books and all that. And he says, the least provable case for fairness, transparency, and security is American elections. Okay, now that's pretty scary. But the fact that people have now seen individuals like myself, I'm here in Arizona, Senator Borelli, Representative Biasucci, some of the other folks who have been really active in the election security and transparency movement. It's amazing to see that people do have hope. Now, back, I think you were going down the path of what's been done to give people more hope. Is that the right question?
Correct.
Okay. Well, We've got a couple of things that the legislature attempted to do, but were sidelined by the guy that I'm replacing. One of those is paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level on election day. And, you know, Nancy Pelosi even, I guess there's a tweet out there. Our election was hijacked. There is no question Congress has a duty to protect our democracy. Well, it's interesting that the very people who say defend democracy are the ones trying to tear it down.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we just have to follow the facts, follow the evidence. This is an evidence-based exercise, and that doesn't mean crap that's put in the media. All right. So we have a legislature here in Arizona that when in the final year that I was there, we passed legislation to fund the launch of watermark ballots that were uniquely numbered so that we could know exactly how many documents were in the universe of documents that was legitimate. So if somebody tried to copy a ballot and shove it into the system, or a whole bunch of ballots, we would know immediately that the count is off just by the number of ballot blanks that are in the system, regardless of what the vote is. All right, that's the first audit check. The next audit check is, all right, which ones have a watermark? Because anything without a watermark doesn't count. It's illegitimate. And of course, the left wanted to say, well, you'll be able to track people's votes and you'll be able to do, no, actually you won't. But this is the fear-mongering crap that they use in fifth generation warfare, which is psychological operations. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They want to convince people that these are bad things. There's a couple things that are going to be going to the ballot that are important, and they're tangential to voting. So for example, we have the border security proposition, where it makes entry of the state of Arizona through anything other than a legal U.S. port of entry a crime. That means we distinguish the difference between a point of entry, which is illegal, and a port of entry. Okay. So, and you know, the point of entry that's going to be state law. The port of entry is covered by the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, those guys. So we have a situation here in Arizona where our Sinaloa cartel lawyer of a Secretary of State is actually facilitating the registration of illegal aliens into the system. Now, voter registration happens at the county level. However, the Secretary of State is working with NGOs, non-government organizations, to help illegals get registered to vote. The issue here is under federal law, it is illegal for a non-citizen to vote. Now, at the same time, we have the Biden administration. In fact, if people want to read up on this, they can subscribe to my Substack. I just posted this morning, markfinchem.substack.com. I encourage you to go out and take a look.
I'll put that in the description.
Yeah. So we have the Biden administration is using federal taxpayer dollars and federal agencies to facilitate the registration of illegal entrants into our country to vote, knowing full well that it is illegal under federal law for a non-citizen to vote. Now, I believe, and I don't want to misstate this, but I believe President Trump, actually it was Attorney General Paxton this morning on Bannon's War Room, was talking about in the state of Texas, it's illegal for an illegal alien to register to vote, and it's illegal for an organization or an individual to facilitate that. And I happen to agree with Attorney General Paxton. When President Trump is back in office, the full force of the federal investigative arm, the DOJ, which will have to be completely revamped, it will be up to President Trump to direct that those individuals are prosecuted. Now, I know it's not fun to throw the word treason around, but if you look at the Oxford definition of treason, it is an action taken against one's countrymen. That's the broadest definition. If you are undermining our Constitution with your actions, y'all better, anybody that's listening to this, it's better to be a witness than a suspect. If you know of somebody or you have participated in this, you will get caught up with. You will be found out, and the consequences will probably be severe. Because what you're doing is you are stealing the one thing that it's the great equalizer for us all, and that's our voter franchise. So we've also got a couple of other things that are going to the ballot here in Arizona, but these are statutory changes that the people are going to. It's in Arizona. We can send something to the ballot for the people to vote on directly. We have to do that because we have a governor that vetoes good public policy. So we have to go around the governor, and that's the way we do it. I think that that is one of the things that will give a great deal of hope to people. And I think in the coming term, we need to establish, I think, a black letter law that a county has the affirmative authority to conduct a hand count comparison of machine tabulation with paper ballots. Right now, in fact, we're engaged, the Election Fairness Institute, where I'm the executive director, we are engaged in a lawsuit right now with Mojave County, where one of the county supervisors was threatened. In fact, the whole board was threatened by Attorney General Chris Mays in what is actually itself an illegal act, a civil rights violation. But they were threatened if they were to move to hand counting of paper ballots on Election Day. She's claiming that they are required to use the machines. Well, the machine industrial complex, the voting industrial complex, they got hundreds of millions of dollars invested in this, and they are using state attorney generals and county prosecutors to secure their beachhead so that they don't lose business dollars. Mm-hmm. That's what this is about. And there are political apparatchiks who don't want to be revealed that they probably don't belong in office because the machines altered the election results. In fact, Carrie Lake and I went to the U.S. Supreme Court revealing that the county of Maricopa lied to the lower courts when they said that the software they were using was EAC certified. That's the Election Assistance Commission. In fact, they had altered the software in the back end, and we had proof of that. We presented that proof to the court. The court declined to hear the case. We've gone back now to the lower court, and this issue is not over yet. Because we'll probably see that rear its ugly head in 2024. And we're trying to establish what can we do about this that the courts will actually hear the case. And by the way, there's been a lot of accusations. Well, you've not presented any evidence and you've been thrown out of court. No, actually, in the vast majority of cases, we haven't even gotten into court because the courts refuse to hear the cases, coming up with one reason or another. Well, that needs to come to an end. I think that there are some judges that need to be impeached, and we'll be driving that initiative as well. So Arizonans are not sitting down and taking this lightly. There is great hope in this state for secure and transparent elections.
Could you please speak on why the courts didn't hear it, and how is that possible? Because I mean, I myself, I know, and everyone else watched after November 2020, watched into 2021, but really this November, December 2020, these cases go forward and it was something's going to happen. And it's just thrown out, just left, right, and that I mean, total demoralization. It was just one after the other. No, thrown out. You know, it's safe harbor day. The press has called it over, just one by electors, and you're just watching the whole thing. You're watching, Pence certify it, and you're just it's the dream where you're trying to run and you can't catch up or get away from the you're just watching this everywhere you turn, just institution after institution, just co-signing blatant fraud and truly nothing. I don't know what other word there is than a rape of the institution of voter integrity. I understand that there's fraud. There's fraud in everything. You go to the local grocery store, I'm sure there's fraud.
Right.
But such a blatant defiling of it was, I mean, really the most disillusioning and hopelessness inducing feeling I think I've had in my life.
Yeah. You're not alone. Imagine going through a year and 3/4 of a campaign.
Yeah.
Only to see 390,000 ballots counted that should not have been counted, and to have your opponent declared the victor when you know full well that he lost by probably as many as 200,000 plus votes, especially going into election day when CNN suggested in their polling that Mark Finchem would win by 3 points, and he loses by 1. Something's just not right there, especially when you've got county officials that are caught lying and altering software. And so, to your question about the judges, this is a long-term infiltration project
Hmm.
by the extreme left.
Long march to the institutions.
We look at, for example, the Arizona bar. It is totally captured by the extreme left. And my hope is that we will reduce the Arizona bar to nothing more than a fraternal organization. Yeah, I'm calling them out. My objective is to sever the relationship between the Arizona bar and the Arizona courts. The Arizona courts have abdicated their responsibility to the bar for licensing, for testing, for maintenance. That's got to come to an end. The Arizona bar is not elected; they're unaccountable. Yet they control who will have representation in court. Arizona bar, because of this cast of clowns with the project, I forget the name of it, Project 45 or something like that. It's Democrat and Republican, well, Democrat lawyers registered as Republicans
Hmm.
made it their business to disbar every attorney that has represented an America First candidate, regardless of the state. This is a racketeering operation.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, it has interfered with the ability of people like myself and Kerry Lake and Abe Hamaday to have adequate representation in courts of law. So yeah, I'm coming after the Arizona bar. And I know that there's a lot of my colleagues that are going to stand with me. I know that there's a lot of attorneys in Arizona, a lot of lawyers who would like to see the bar eviscerated. That's the mission. Because out of that comes the lawyers who become judges. And when you have extreme activists like Melissa Julian, the judge that heard my case, John Hanna, who seems to like poetry as opposed to following black letter law, Judge Thompson, who would only let Kerry present 1 out of 10 points in the corruption of her particular election. Your point is well taken, sir, that where do the people turn for justice? Because it ain't just cause. It's not justice when the court refuses to hear a case. Oh, well, because of laches. Laches is you took too long to come to the court, or the case isn't ripe yet, not enough has happened, or you can't voice a concrete injury. Okay, these are all devices that the court has put up to prevent the people from receiving justice. And there's a day coming where the court is going to have to re-examine their position on things. Because I'm one of those people that believes if the court's not going to do its work, then we need to cut their budget. You're either going to hear the cases, or apparently you don't need as many judges. So I'm fine with cutting your budget by some percentage. So get your act together and let's perhaps revisit the rules of engagement so that individuals like myself and Kerry and Abe can have adequate representation by an attorney who is skilled and qualified. And enough of this. The other thing that we've got going on here in Arizona, and in fact, this is something that should give a lot of people hope. It kind of went unnoticed. The Arizona State GOP sued the Maricopa County recorder, Stephen Richer. In that case, the judge found for Richer and sanctioned with fees the Arizona GOP. Well, it went all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court came back and essentially said, no, sanctions and fees throw a chilling pall, a cold, wet blanket on the political process, and we're not going to permit that. Well, I'm going through a similar case right now where we appealed to the Supreme Court, where the lower court applied about 50 grand in fees and sanctions to me and my attorney. In fact, the bar even forced my attorney to abandon me while we were going through the court process. So there will be another piece to that puzzle called Section 1983 of U.S. Code. That is a civil rights violation. You've deprived me from my constitutional right to access to the courts.
Hmm.
Equal protection. So this is a fight that people like myself, I've just dedicated, I guess it's going to be the rest of my life, to make sure that those who come after me have got protection. Because right now, it's literally the Wild West in the courtroom. Judges do whatever they damn well please, regardless of the black letter law. That's got to come to an end.
And what, people have to realize is that the road this is going down hurts everyone equally. It's in that, as John F. Kennedy said, those who make what, peaceful. I'm gonna butcher the quote. I don't want to butcher it. Make violent revolution inevitable. Make peaceful. What resistance? People that make people. I think paraphrasing. People that make people peaceful resistance impossible. Make violent revolution inevitable. It's gonna harm everyone. I'm 34 years old. I want to have a family. I want to grow old, and I would imagine that people who are voting for Kamala, who are the same age as me and not totally off the deep end, but just agree to disagree. I'm sure they too, like myself. I have a biology degree. I'm not one of the special forces guys I interviewed. Them and me on both sides of the aisle at this age, we're going to be consumed and killed in a violent civil collapse. That's not calling for violence. That's the antithesis of it. But we're going over, we're sinking the Titanic and saying, we're taking down the far right. It's like, dog, the water's on your feet too. And you
That's
start to
a great
realize
metaphor.
it's going down. And as the lights go out and the ship cracks in half, you start looking around, you have that dawning moment of, oh, I'm on here too. But by then, it doesn't matter. There is no I told you so. We're all gonna freeze to death. And that's what I always point out to people is and I'm sure some people are equally delusional and they want that and they think that they're gonna suffer. We're all gonna be consumed by the indifferent. Imagine lighting your neighbor's lawn on fire in the middle of the woods, and then being surprised when a forest fire the size of a state kills you and everyone you know.
Yeah.
That's where this is going. When you deny people the ability to just come out and voice what's going on. Where do you think it's going to go? It's and that, I think that is above all else what I'm fine with taking it on the chin. My guy lost. Whatever. It's watching your sports team lose. It sucks. Then you get up the next day and you go
But the
about your life.
question is, did your guy lose in a fair
Well,
contest?
that's what I'm saying is I'm okay
That
with
is the that's the
I'm
question.
I'm okay with my guy losing it if you go that sucks and then you whatever. But when
Right.
you're watching it come apart and then you're seeing people denied justice and due process and the human respect to just go hear them out. What's their issue? If they come in and they tell you the reptilian alien stole, you might go, yeah, we're gonna throw it out. But if you're coming forward and you're going, hey, we have all this, digital signatures and we have all these CCTVs of this and that going on, and we have these communications, and it kind of looks like they're taking it over and you have incentive because whoever takes over that controls the local power and controls industry. And you go, I think there's some fraud in there, and you throw them out and say you're a Nazi. What do you think is going to happen? And so that's where I come in. Is it's admittedly it's very selfish. I think I got a lot of years ahead of me. I'm pretty healthy. I want
Yeah.
to live a long life. I don't want to see this place collapse, and that's my concern.
Well, the other thing that gives me grave concern is not just the assault upon the average everyday American's franchise to vote. It's the targeting of individuals. For example, Tina Peters.
Mm-hmm.
Peters in Mesa, Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
Mesa County, Colorado, had the foresight to say, something's not right with one of our elections. And then and I'm going to call her a criminal, Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State in Colorado, engaged in a criminal act by facilitating the deployment of what's called a trusted build. That is a software deployment that obliterated the records on every single voting machine in the state of Colorado en masse. 62 counties that use Dominion voting systems. 61 of those counties, I've been given to understand, the election records for 2020 were obliterated, except for one county. Tina Peters attempted to have, she followed administrative process. She went through and asked her own IT department, hey, I'm concerned about this trusted build thing. I would like to have a forensic image made of the hard drive of our equipment to preserve these electronic records. So under 52 U.S. Code, section 20701, if people want to read it, election officials are required, they have a duty to protect electronic and paper records for 22 months after an election. Hard stop. It is unequivocal. It is unambiguous. You have that responsibility. Yet, Jenna Griswold and 61 county clerks around the state of Colorado permitted those records to be obliterated in violation of federal law. That's a crime, by the way. Figure each one of those records is an individual instance. Well, Tina tells me that on her system, there were 20,000 of those such records. 20,000 times 61 tells you the scope of what this cover-up was, and I'm going to call it a cover-up, was a cover-up of the alteration of an election, which begs the question, are the people in Colorado who are currently occupying offices, did they get there legitimately? Now, as long as we're going to talk about legitimately, I'm going to ask you a question that you probably don't know the answer to unless you know who Ivan Raiklin is.
I had him on here a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so what was
Yeah.
missing on January 6th in the well of the House?
Uh, what was missing? Oh, I mean, I would
It's okay.
security footage. I don't know. That would be
Very
my
few people know this. Well,
and they opened the doors. I don't know.
so January 6th is a day that the Congress convened
Mhm.
their arguments and opposition to the award of electoral college electors to one of the two candidates in question. Okay. 128 congressmen began to express concerns about the elections in their state. And I believe it was 9 senators came alongside them. And that number was growing, by the way, 24 hours prior to the hearing. That number had gone from a scant 60 some to 128, and the number was growing. So the Fedsurrection had to swing into action to provide cover for action that was about to happen on the floor of the U.S. House. When Paul Gosar stood up and had papers in hand and said, Arizona has a problem with our election, the proposal, and in fact, this is what this opportunity is for the states to voice objections. The proposal was to return the electors back to Arizona for the legislature to ratify the election. Meaning, we recognize there's an issue here. If the election was irredeemably compromised and the state of Arizona cannot, if the legislature cannot ratify that the election was indeed fair, transparent, and secure, that you can't use those electors. So now the magic number 272 comes into jeopardy. But what was missing on the floor was a quorum.
You're
A
gonna have to enlighten me.
constitutional requirement to have sufficient number of members present to have a legal vote. A quorum is necessary in order to seat the new government. What that means, and I would urge you to reach out to Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Raiklin again and perhaps talk about the quorum. You have to have a quorum present in order to legitimately pass the enabling legislation to seat the new government. What that means, in the absence of a quorum, we essentially have an illegitimate occupancy of federal offices by individuals who could not be declared the winners, who could not receive the electors because of the lack of a quorum. That's unambiguous. Yet they steamrolled it through and said, well, we're having an emergency outside, so we're going to suspend the rules. Okay, you can suspend the rules all you want to, but you can't suspend the Constitution. That comes directly from Chief Justice John Roberts. Just because we have COVID-19 doesn't mean that the Constitution can be suspended. So now we have this situation that is an existential threat to the survival of the United States. We have a rogue administration. We have a rogue criminal enterprise in the Democrat Party that is attempting to seal the fate of the United States and make us permanently a collection of Marxist states, all collected into one. Sounds vaguely familiar, doesn't it?
A union.
The Soviet Union. That's exactly what they did. And we all know how that ended. Yeah. So when you have brave individuals like Tina Peters, who she took her duty very seriously. She swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Colorado against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, anybody who seeks to violate federal law and the protection of records is an enemy of the state. Jenna Griswold. She's a lawyer. She knows better. Now comes the prosecution of Tina Peters in a state courtroom for a number of violations, all felonies. I mean, who charges an elderly woman, Gold Star mom,
Mm-hmm.
mother of a Navy SEAL who died in the line of duty, who takes her oath of office and her duty to her constituents extremely seriously? Who charges that individual with 8 felonies and 2 misdemeanors? This was an attempt to crush her and send a message to anyone who would stand up against the Colorado administrative state. Do this and you will have the same fate. This sounds an awful lot like Dominion using the state apparatus to shut people down and shut people up, because they do not want their hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts called into question all across the United States. So I was at the trial for a couple of days. I watched the jurors. I watched the judge. I watched the prosecution. This is an embarrassment for the state of Colorado and the people who live in Grand Junction and Mesa County. I grieve for you, because a miscarriage of justice happened right under your noses, and because there were personality conflicts with individuals who worked for Clerk Peters, she's now been convicted of a number of felonies that she should, quite frankly, she never should have been charged with. And one of the things that she did in taking her duty seriously, she tried to get 2 different organizations that were within the county apparatus to make a hard drive on her computer. Well, under her authority as the clerk of record, she had to go outside in order to get a forensic image made. And she contracted with somebody on the outside. For that, they want to burn her down.
So for this November, then, how would you, if you were tasked with it, how would you allay? It doesn't mean grow complacent, not at all. But for people who have the general feeling of it's going to be stolen again, what would you say to them, good or
I,
bad?
I would tell the people who are watching this, go to your county supervisors, your county commissioners, and demand that they abandon the machines and do a paper count, hand count of paper ballots at the precinct level on election day. In the alternative, if they refuse to do that, call upon them to do a comparative hand count of the paper ballots as soon as the tabulation is completed, before anybody else can touch those records, so that fictitious ballots can't be inserted into the machine number. Because here's what inevitably we will find. is that there's more ballots counted than there are paper ballots to be counted, meaning more ballots tabulated within the machine environment. In other words, fictitious voters. So, we look at, we see what they're doing. Excuse me. We see what they're doing in the voter registration architecture. Once an individual registers to vote, they don't really care if they're there to vote. They've got the registration. That's all they need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need to have 30,000 votes, go to cackling Kamala in order to shore up her crazy number. I mean, it could be 130,000. As long as you've got the numbers within the system that you can move around, that's how you can take over an election. And when you alter the software in the back end, like Maricopa County did for 2020 and 2022, it's very easy to do. And this is a really comforting thing. The God keys, what are called God keys, were found in a data file on the other side of the Windows login. Wasn't even secured. With those keys, one can enter the back end of the system, alter the software, deliver an altered version of the software, deliver a data file package, pull the legit data file out, put the fictitious data file in, and quick as Bob's your uncle, you now have a winner that was selected, not elected. So that's one of the biggest reasons for the abandonment of machines. In fact, Clint Curtis, who was one of the first people to write vote flipping software in the state of Florida for a Republican congressman of all people, Clint said the only way to secure elections is to wrap the machines in duct tape and throw them in the ocean and go back to paper counting.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. It's got to be hand counting paper ballots at the precinct level. And by the way, on election day, so that nobody has advance notice
Mm-hmm.
of how one candidate is doing over another.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get that, and then
Yeah.
you got this is how many votes we need.
So here's another thing that I would propose. It's going to be highly unpopular with most political campaigns, but I would propose that we prohibit the release of the names of individuals who have voted in early voting. Because when you know those individuals' names and the party that they are a member of, or if they're not a party, if they're just independent, you can make certain assumptions about how the election will turn out based on statistical models. So if you know that you have a 45% voter turnout for Republicans and a 35% turnout for Democrats, you can have an unnatural influence by going after these individuals. Now, of course, this is going to disturb the whole vote chasing, ballot chasing architecture that some people have promoted. But look, the process of voting is a personal responsibility issue. Just like having a birth certificate that is certified, showing that you're a U.S. citizen, that's a personal responsibility issue. That's not up to the state to step in and grant you special rights. You have to demonstrate that you're a citizen in order to register to vote. At the same time, you should have to show photo ID in order to get your ballot to cast that vote. This is common sense stuff. I mean, you look at the Democrat convention right now. They have built a wall of trucks and fences and all that to
Oh
keep people.
yeah.
And you have to show photo ID to verify that you are who you say you are, and you must be registered as a Democrat to enter the premises. So apparently, the whole notion that walls don't work kind of blows up in their face, that you
Voter
don't need to
ID.
have photo ID to come in or to vote. This is the height of hypocrisy. But then that's what the Democrat Party is known for.
Yeah, and it also doesn't do anything to call out the hypocrisy. I used to always think, oh, it's pointed out. It doesn't matter. They don't care. It's not.
No, because what they're doing is they're engaged in the Marxist takeover and turning us into the Soviet states of America. That is the objective. In fact, just go back to, I think it was 1954. Nikita Khrushchev said, "We will take you over without firing a shot."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that kind of fell by the wayside when they attempted to murder President Trump and killed a firefighter, uh, injured two others. But there's a lot to that, and just a word about that. That's fulfilling a prophecy, by the way, that he will touch his ear, and the blood from his ear will touch his heel, and his shoes will slip off. That's talking about Cyrus and the end of Babylon.
Oh.
Yeah. So we are in an incredible time in the history of this nation. The question becomes, will we survive another 225 years, or will the United States of America be tossed on the ash bin of history? I'd like to think the latter is not the direction we go, that the former, I do believe that under President Trump, our greatest days are ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
When we exit the endless wars, when we return to sound fiscal policy, and when everybody has the opportunity to ply their trade, to make a living, to live a life that is free of government interference.
Yeah, it's I don't
I
know. I
put
think
behind you there, didn't I?
yeah, no, I think I think seeing just the, the tolerances of how close that bullet was to his head. I mean, if seeing that the DNC is truly a death cult. I mean, IUD statues, vasectomies, abortions. I mean, this is some like Aztec. Sure, it's modern day and there's flat screen TVs and Wi-Fi. It is Aztec. It is. I mean, you're ripping out organs to the sun god. And then you have a bullet graze Trump's head at wasn't it at 611, and isn't it the verse, isn't that the armor of God? Isn't that the 611 verse? I mean, it gets to a point where you don't even have to be a believer, but you start looking at it and you go, what are the chances of that statistically? And it does start to get to like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Especially
And
with two shooters.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it starts, but to me, that's not God. He's not doing the work for us, but it seems like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, we're getting way off ontologically, but you know, maybe there weren't enough people with their heart in the right place in the 60s, and it wasn't a nation in God's eyes worth saving. Who knows? It was kind of the start of the forever wars. And, maybe that you let Kennedy happen. And if we're just getting really into the kind of meta philosophical of it, and it might be that there is you know, God knows the true votes. God knows the true number, and it might be he's looking down, and it's like, hey, it's worth saving. It's worth saving, and I think if it's worth saving, it will be saved, and if it's not worth saving, it won't be. And obviously, it's a very simplistic, you know, hindsight rationale kind of model, but that's what I think. I think if it wasn't worth saving, I think if 2% of the people in the country weren't Satan worshiping pedophiles and the other 98% were, God might say, yeah, toss the match in. It's over. You guys will be fine in the afterlife, but we're burning it all down. It looks like, it is the hand of God saying, like, hold the phone. It's 50.1% of them are actually still good people. And that's how I look at it. And I do find it, it's odd, but, and I've always said this, I do find there to be an optimism in seeing that. I mean, it really is. You can call it whatever it is satanic at its core. It's anti-human. It is anti-nuclear family. It is anti, life. It is anti everything. It is anti-energy. It is anti-growth. It is anti-everything. And the occult symbolism is so far off the charts. But I look at that and I actually, it does kind of give me hope, because I go, they truly believe that there's evil and they truly are evil, Well, that implies, just like light implies dark, sunrise implies sunset, it implies that there's good. So I look at that and I go, those are real kind of demons walking on the earth. Oh, so there's also angels. So I try to look at the light side of it is there's an opposite. There's an opposite. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. That's how I try to stay positive. I have to stay positive because there's really no point in being hopeless. There's really no point in despairing because, if you don't give up, and this has always been my logic, is if you don't give up, you may not necessarily win, but you don't have to fail. You can go, I failed today, but I can get up tomorrow. And then one day you either succeed and you succeed, or you die and then you didn't fail because you're out of the equation. It's voided. So that's how I look at it. Is like, yeah, just keep going, and you'll either live to see yourself succeed, or you'll die. But you have to consciously welcome in and surrender to defeat in order to be defeated. It's philosophical. There is no tomorrow. Tomorrow's today. There is no yesterday. There's
Yeah.
today. It's
Well,
philosophical.
I choose to be victorious, not a victim.
Exactly.
And I think that we are seeing the emergence of the condition for God's hand to be manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, you mankind have failed. I'm going to step in here and I'm going to put the people in place to, forgive the expression, resurrect that which once was of the United States and its greatness.
Mm.
So the progressive era, I would like to think, has come to an end because of its wholly manifest evil. I mean, everything from this debauchery that we saw that opened the Olympics, granted it was across the pond, but the world found that offensive.
Yeah.
But the people who were closest to it rejoiced. Well, the same thing happened with Baal, the sacrifice of babies. I find it interesting on that note that the very same people who are advocating replacement theory in the United States were so happy that 70 million babies were killed
Yeah.
since Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. Fortunately, the court reversed that and put that back in the hands of the state. That is something the people of Arizona are going to have an opportunity to vote on, and I hope that they reject it soundly, that killing an unborn human is murder. It's murder. Call it what it is. Let's not, oh, well, you have to use the term fetus. No, 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 no.
No, you
It's an
don't.
unborn human.
You killed it.
Just because you can't face the fact that you are engaged in killing unborn humans,
Yeah.
that's not my problem.
It's not on
That's,
me.
that's somebody else's problem, because here's the joy of that. It's convicting. They know that they're guilty of it.
Mhm.
That's why they have to change the terms. That's why they have to obfuscate what's really going on. They are convicted of it.
Yeah. You don't do that if you don't truly think it is. Right.
Exactly.
It'd be like if it'd be like if you called me like a puppy abuser. I was like, what are you talking about? You're like, you have a dog, you accidentally step on its toe and it yelps, and you're like, I'm so sorry, and you pick it up and you kiss it. You're like, but you never go, whoa, hold on. I'm not an abuser. It was a physical aggression. No, you go, no, I didn't hurt it. It's a little puppy baby. I accidentally stepped on its toe. I feel awful. Unless, of course, you actually do beat animals, and then you'd be like, well, it's different. It's physical discipline. And you're like, hey man, you kind of seem a little guilty. You're like, oh, listen, I know that I'm 500% its weight and it has no cognitive abilities, and I beat it with my own hands. But it's really what it is it's guidance. You'd be like, hey man, you need to take a walk. You need to say a prayer or something. Yeah, it's convicting. That's what it is.
Well, if folks want to follow me
Yeah.
and some of the writing that I do, I have an inside track Substack that I do. I try not to do those things that are already out in the media, but the story behind the story, because I do have some relationships with the newsmakers. I don't have to deal with the news fakers. People can follow me at Mark Finchem, finchem.substack.com. If they want to see the work that we're doing with the Election Fairness Institute, they can visit GoEFI, that's for Election Fairness Institute.org. That's goefi.org. We're a 501c3. We do not accept government contracts. We don't accept government grants. We are wholly funded by the generosity of individuals around this country. And if folks want to help support us, there is a donate button there. And then, of course, if they want to see more about me as a state Senate candidate, they can visit votefinchem.com. And I'm probably one of the most transparent candidates out there. You can text me at 520-808-7340. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You're more transparent. I'm pretty transparent. I'll never put my number out there. So you've taken the torch. You are now the most transparent member of this two-person conversation. Dude, thank you so much. That was awesome. I feel better. I feel better. A lot of shows I do, I feel far worse after it. So I actually do feel
My
better.
mission is to offer hope.
Yes, sir.
But people have to be engaged. They have to be involved. We have an opportunity to take our elections back. We don't have to live in the matrix.
Yeah.
We can step outside of that and we can demand better of our local elected officials. And it starts at the county level. You know, General Flynn talks about local action with national impact. Well, it doesn't get any more local than your hometown and with your hometown elected officials. Demand better of them and tell them, look, we want paper ballots counted by hand on election day at the precinct level.
And as proof for people that think, well, what can I do? I started this podcast on a laptop up on my parents' garage, and I had General Flynn on here a couple months ago, and I've had Mike Lindell on here. If you're doing the right thing, your heart's in it, and you give it your mind, body, and soul, God will help you out here and there. He'll give you a little, push you over the edge. So you can do it too. Don't feel helpless. Don't feel hopeless. That's what they want. But there's my favorite memes is if the situation was hopeless, their propaganda wouldn't be necessary.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming on here, man. I'd love to have you on again sometime. I will put all of your all the links that you named. I'll put those all in the description. Guys, please go check out his Substack. And yeah, I'd love to have you on again sometime, man.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'll post this this podcast out on my Substack so that all my visitors can follow you as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless everybody.